Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Matthew with Watty's channel. Welcoming you back to the last of the Mattel Creations releases of, well, the Mattel Retros. But, see, it's not the very last Mattel Retro review video, however, because as you know, just before this series was released, Series 14, Ringside Collectibles released their own box set of Mattel Retros. So, those figures didn't come from Mattel Creations directly. They came from the Ringside exclusive. So instead of kind of mixing that one in with these videos, I decided to postpone that one. So I'm going to do all of the regular Mattel / Mattel Creation reviews. And then the last video will be all of the Ringside collectible figures, the 4 figures that came in as part of that box set. Now, also in that video, I'm going to talk about Series 15, which is going to be upcoming figures from Mattel Creations that can be expected, as well as some of the planned updated figures coming into Ringside Collectibles among their exclusive line. So, as far as Wave 4 from Mattel Creations / Series 14, this is one I've been dying for. When I wanted to make the Hasbro, or the Mattel Retro review videos, I really wanted to start off at Series 14 and kind of work my way down to Series 1. Why? Because Series 14 is the one I've been most excited about. The action figures in this line are absolute killer, bar none. So far, I said Series 9, Randy Savage, Goldust, Randy Orton, and Samoa Joe were the best figures. Based on all 4 figures being absolutely amazing pieces, both in body pose as well as design. Character recognition, a couple of them sure, but overall, name recognition wasn't a perfect score for them. So I'd probably give that release maybe a 9.5 out of 10. With this particular release, a perfect 10 across the board in every facet of imagination. Everything from name recognition, the body types are fantastic, their action features are incredible. And what's really, truly amazing about this particular release, I keep talking about certain characters that if Hasbro never lost the contract and continued producing action figures in the 1990s, into the mid-90s, into the later half of the 90s, there are certain characters that would have been created. One of the biggest names I always talk about was Diesel. You finally got Diesel in Series 10 of the Mattel Retros. A must-have. Goldust. Got him in Series 9 of Mattel Retros. He would have absolutely been made. Guys like Henry Godwinn would have been made. Duke the Dumpster Droese would have been made. Isaac Yankem would have been made in the mid-90s, and then you would have seen Kane in the later half of the 90s. I'm pretty sure Sting... Well, no, you couldn't really put Sting in there because Sting never jumped ship to WWF, and the only reason he's part of the WWF family nowadays is because the merge between WCW and WWF. But another legend from WCW that came over to WWF and probably should have had a bigger push than he did. For whatever reason, I guess he just was not a fan favorite of Vince McMahon, and it's a shame because for a man of his size, what he could do in the ring acrobatically was absolutely amazing. And per usual, when we take a look at these figures, we're going to look at them based on how they are on the back of the card. First one is Undertaker. Now, the only downside of this particular figure, it's twofold. Number one, this exact Undertaker, I'm talking purple gloves with purple socks, and this exact body pose was already created in Series 1. So, recreating the exact same figure with very minor modifications was kind of a waste of a figure right here. Now, based on who else was released in this line, I understand, creating another Undertaker, and that's perfectly fine. I would have loved to have seen this one with a much different fighting pose, though. Arms spread apart. This is a fantastic figure. I mean, like I said, this is easily it's the best action feature because none of us are using the action feature. When we were kids and we were wrestling these guys, The action feature, it was nice to play with, but I mean, you weren't actually wrestling with those features. The only thing that they made different with this particular figure was the addition of this little, opera little mask that they add, Phantom of the Opera mask, whatever you call it. That's how I call it, Phantom of the Opera, whatever. So again, as you guys probably already aware, I'm sure I've talked about it. In the mid-90s, Undertaker was injured and was out of wrestling, and Ted DiBiase, brought back the Undertaker. It turns out it wasn't the real Undertaker. You had his hair, dressed in his outfit, all gray, and when the real Undertaker returned, he was decked out in all purple, kind of separating himself from his old school self. And they had a matchup, and the original Undertaker defeated him. I think I was like 10 years old or something, and I was in 3rd grade. And, 1995, if I'm not mistaken. So, 1995, I was 10, I was in 3rd grade, and I remember one of my classmates, we were talking about that match, and I'm like, the real Undertaker won, and he's like, no, man, I watched it on pay-per-view, and, the fake Undertaker won, the purple Undertaker won. So, he didn't even realize that the new Undertaker in purple was the real guy. I don't remember exactly how that conversation went, but details aren't important. That's just a conversation. Absolutely love this figure. Again, fantastic job. And I think because this one, not identical, but it closely resembles the overall lengthwise or width of the figure that you get from the Hasbro Series 4 / Mailway / Series 8, etc. That kind of keeps things interesting. And again, the simple pose keeps the quality moving forward. And the next one was an absolute killer addition to the line. You can't have The Undertaker without having manager Paul Bearer. And this, like I've said with all of the managers, and guys like, Mean Gene Okerlund, when I talk managers, I am including him as well. This is why I love the manager figures. It seems like the managers can never... They never do the managers wrong. Cello Toys, with their review of their interviewers or commentators, etc., they do the same thing. Their figures are absolutely amazing. Now, all of your managers, like Mean Gene Okerlund, interviewer, manager Jimmy Hart that we saw a couple videos ago, you have manager Paul Bearer. Every single one of them have the exact same width to the body type. They all have that slamming motion feature. This one, what? I've talked about it. Just because they're managers doesn't mean that you can't use these guys as wrestlers. Best believe if I was a kid and I had this guy, he'd be a wrestler for me, no doubt about it. When I was doing my LJN Royal Rumbles, I had freaking Freddie Blassie, a guy who's probably 70-something years old at the time of the creation, in my matches. And he'd be a bona fide Royal Rumble champion because, again, he had a fantastic pose, and he was just so much fun to work with. Paul Bearer, absolutely. He's got that nice little Addams Family type of look to it. Little Gomez Addams or something. And, he was one of those faces that when I talk about, faces of childhood, who do you think about? Hulk Hogan will always be at top of your list, right? Vince McMahon, Mean Gene Okerlund, absolutely. Guys like The Undertaker and Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, sure. Manager-wise, was there, outside of Elizabeth, was there any more important manager from childhood other than Paul Bearer with The Undertaker? Harvey Whippleman? No. Bobby Heenan? Okay. Bobby Heenan was a fantastic commentator, but as a kid, you absolutely despised him as a human being. And, obviously, it's all an act. That's not the type of person he is in real life, but, he really was a sleazebag as a manager, and, he always had these huge stables. But come on, to me, I think Paul Bearer was probably one of my favorites. And I enjoyed Paul Bearer. I enjoyed his antics. I enjoyed the fact that he was manager of The Undertaker, who was incredible. And he didn't have that type of personality like a Bobby Heenan or little fishy guy like Jimmy Hart. I was watching some AWA wrestling matches, and Jimmy Hart actually physically gets into the ring and starts beating up on guys. And I'm like, I never remember that as a kid in WWF, watching Jimmy Hart that active. Like, he'd always be on like the apron or something, and like Hulk Hogan run over to him and like punch him or something, knock him over. But I would never see him actually get any offense in, so that was pretty incredible. Getting Paul Bearer in, just a perfect addition to the line, a perfect addition to this series, along with The Undertaker. One of my favorite pieces. Again, if I had to choose my top 5, it's tough. Because aesthetically, along with action feature, Jimmy Hart, Mean Gene Okerlund, Paul Bearer, incredible. They should all be on the top 5, at worst top 10. But they're just a lot of great, wrestler characters to put on that list as well. But I'm kind of interested how I'd rate them if I ever went back, 1 through 10. Manager Paul Bearer. All right, next up, when I talked about a character that needed to be made by Hasbro in the 90s, again, Isaac Yankem / Kane, a no-brainer. Goldust, a no-brainer. Your Diesel was a no-brainer. I still felt like Mabel was an important piece. The Godwins. Guys like that. There was another name. A name that kind of surprised me because he did not have a WCW Galoob figure. He did not have a WWF Hasbro figure. And that's so frustrating because he was one of those absolute legends and one of the guys I absolutely loved as a kid. It wasn't until original San Francisco toy makers, and again, I didn't even know about that line up until a couple years ago when I finally learned of this character getting his own action figure. Who am I talking about? Big Van Vader. Absolutely love the fact that one, yes, you add Vader to your roster. Got to be pumped up about that, but also they did him right and they gave him an incredible overall look and pose to the figure, which is amazing. Now, I do have a Vader custom, and I think I got that Vader custom before the Mattel Retro line released, and I'm trying to think about it. Do I have it on the back wall? Nope, you know what? I probably have him on the bottom shelf with the main display, but there's the seller that I talked about, Steve Watson in the UK. He had Vader, Vader action figures, both with mask and without mask. Perfect face mold to the actual character, the actual wrestler. Vader himself, absolutely fantastic. The only thing I like about that custom better than this one is it comes with that kind of like that elephant helmet that he wore in WCW, and that used to be one of the most coolest accessories, is watching him come down and in his matches with Sting especially. And this man had to be 400 pounds or at least close to it, right? But he was freaking agile like crazy. You would constantly see him climb to the top rope, do a backflip and land on the guy. And the fact that at 400 pounds doing a backflip off a top rope and not injuring himself, landing to perfection to do a full flip and not hurting the guy that he's landing on to boot. To me, that is a true essence of a professional wrestler. And again, I think he was brought in from WCW because they thought he was going to bring in a lot of fans and he was going to be like, your top-notch heel who was really going to threaten for, the top seed. And it just never worked out for him, and it sucks. And who was it? I think it was Shawn Michaels in the 96, I want to say. 95 or 96 Royal Rumble, but I'm going to say 96 for the sake of argument, where he eliminated both Yokozuna and Vader at the same time. And I thought that was pretty incredible. I mean, that's like 1,000 pounds one man just tossed out on his own. But the overall look of the figure is incredible. Fantastic fighting pose. Perfect look to how he was. And, a very simple pose. I would have preferred if his arms came up and they had a little slamming motion. It doesn't do that, but you like your Andre the Giant from Hasbro Series 1, Dusty Rhodes Series 2, etc. It's just a, head slamming motion. That's okay. Beautiful figure. Absolutely love it. And this one, along with the Zombie Sailors, either Dino Bravo or like the new blue. Well, they have a blue and they have a black variant of Andre the Giant. And those would be those would be some fun figures to have matches with. Or the Grapplers and Gimmicks Mabel. Okay, I gotta stop talking. I'm excited about doing some matches, but I know I'm not gonna do it because I'm gonna find some way to mess it up. The last figure from this line, and it's one that I'm really sad to see be the last one, because this particular series, again, is my favorite series. Everything from the figures themselves, name recognition, what they mean to me from childhood. This was an absolute killer line. Mattel Creations truly outdid themselves with Series 14. And you close it off with... And this one with Jerry the King Lawler, this could be the weakest figure from the line, or from the series, or it could be the best figure from the series. Again, I don't think a lot of people are going to be in the middle on this one. It's either one way or the other. So, figures like Jake Roberts from Series 1 of Hasbro, a host full of others that have that arm punching motion. Just because of the way that the springs are kind of showing in the arm, I never really liked that. The whole dislocating of the shoulder. To me, it just wasn't well, it was an easy figure to work with. It just wasn't the most enjoyable. With this figure, you take away that punching motion, though, the design overall is absolute perfection. And again, his built-on crown, great. Unlike your Billy Gunn or your Tito Santana, your Jake Roberts, etc. Those arms were very thin, right? You look at this arm. This is a nice, big, thick arm, and I think the action would last a whole lot longer on a figure like this than it would on any of the Hasbros. Is that a detriment? It really isn't. And in fact, like I said, I kind of looked at this figure as being my favorite Mattel figure overall, Mattel retro figure. It's tough because the Diesel one, it was such a coveted figure, and I wanted that one for so long. Braun Strowman, as far as grip and playability, was one of the most fun figures ever. Overall display of the arms and look of the figure, I think any one of those three figures I'd have to put on my top list. Where I'd put them, I have no idea. But Jerry the King Lawler, my buddy Jason over on Blatant Inference Wrestling, he does a lot of these AWA review videos where he kind of gives his commentary to the matches that's happening, and like I tell him all the time, you know what, his commentary spot on, and those are just so much fun to kind of watch some of these old wrestling matches and get somebody's fresh take on what's going on in the ring and whatnot, kind of put on extra added commentary. And there are matches in there that I probably never would have seen otherwise. So, obviously, I got to thank him even more for that, because seeing Jerry Lawler against Hulk Hogan, I would never would have imagined a matchup like that would have existed prior. So, being able to see some of these guys, back in their heyday before the bright lights of New York and, the World Wrestling Federation. I know Jerry Lawler was 40 years old or 40-something years old when he entered WWF as a commentator / sometimes wrestler, etc. But I really would have loved to have seen him have a much bigger push than he did. He did have some storylines here and there with guys like, Bret Hart as an example and the Hart family, but I would have loved bigger stories involving him, because he really was a legend in, territories like Tennessee, etc. And how beloved he was in his community. That's got to transcend, the profession. And that's pretty freaking amazing. I am truly proud that Mattel Retros was able to include Jerry Lawler. I think that was an absolutely brilliant addition to the roster. And do I like this one more? Do I like Vader as a new addition more? Because I wanted Vader a whole lot longer, yeah, that would have been something. But I kind of feel like Jerry Lawler. I mean, how did Jerry Lawler not get a Hasbro figure back in the day? So thank you for this. This was an amazing addition. Alright, so guys, that does conclude Series 14, aka Wave 4. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the Ringside Collectibles exclusives. They're 2 packs, so you're going to be looking at 4 figures total, just like what you got from Mattel Creations. And in fact, from the Mattel Retros, these are the first tag team sets that you're actually going to see on card. So that's pretty awesome. And at the end of that video, I'll also talk about upcoming Series 15, some of the figures to be expected, as well as new Ringside Collectible figures that are also due in either towards the end of 2023 or probably more than likely sometime in the early going of 2024. Well, everyone, thank you so much for watching. As always, please leave a comment if you have any questions for me. If there's any information you think I should be aware of course, love hearing from you guys. So, until next time, thanks everybody.